Hello and welcome to another week's Fiber Friday. I'm Dark Serenity, and this week we are going to be continuing learning our next set of stitches. We're going to learn the half double crochet, the double crochet, and the treble crochet. After which we will have learned all the basic stitches required in order to start just about any project. We will be building on the foundation chain, basic chain, magic ring starting stitches that we've worked with, as well as that starting single crochet and that brief little look that we looked at on the slip stitch, with these ones rounding out the end of the basic crochet tutorials on what stitches you should be practicing in order to start getting good at crochet and being able to read and do most any pattern. So first I want to apologize for the sound of the 3D printer. I just got it this weekend and decided to run a decently large print, and it is a little bit louder, and I should have probably done some of the video recording before doing any of the printing, but I didn't think, and I started a 32-hour long print, which is almost done, but unfortunately it will not be done before I have to go to work tomorrow. With that being said, I did print my very first Benchy. I don't know why it came out with a black bottom. I didn't have black filament loaded in there. I loaded in their test filament, which is white. I did eventually load black filament when the second test print did not have enough white to finish it. So I loaded the roll that I had bought alongside of it, so that way I could print the project I'm currently working on. But yeah, if you hear that in the background, I am so sorry. I just don't want to be repeating I'm sorry like 300 times in the video. So this is the one and only apology for that. It is, for the most part, fairly quiet, but there is a point in time where it makes kind of a squeaky sound, and that sucks. I will do better at, in the future, not having to record the video while that is printing. I'll try to do it before or after a print, so that way it's a little bit quieter. Or if I can figure out how to make my microphone work, which is my next goal for today. But let's go ahead and get into the learning. Occasionally you'll see me pop in, and I will be displaying the symbols of some of the terminology that we will be going over, where it's important to do so. The half double crochet in American terminology is written as HDC. In the European terminology, or UK terms, you're going to see it as HTR, as they use half treble crochet. Now, the difference in that is from our single crochet, in UK terms, it's their double crochet. So it makes sense that our American double crochet is their half treble crochet. The symbol for the half double is here. And as I said, we are going to be using American terms through this video. So we're going to start out by making our slip knot. And then we are going to chain 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then because we are doing a half double crochet, we are going to add the extra stitch that we would have for the single crochet, and then one more for that half double. Then we are going to yarn over or yarn under, again, preferring your preference on which one you're practicing with. We are going to put it through the second loop from the hook, so what would be the 10th stitch that we chained. So if I were to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I put the 10th one on here, and then I have 2 loops here. So if I've gone through front and back loop, it should look like I have 4 loops. The 2 working loops, and then the 2 loops from the stitch. I'm going to yarn over again, pull through that stitch, so I now have 3 loops on my project. I'm going to yarn over again and pull through all 3 stitches to make my half double crochet. So again, I'm going to yarn over, stick it through the stitch, yarn over or under, pull through, yarn over, and then pull through all 3 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the end of this row here because I want to show you how to continue moving up the row. Okay, so I'm now here at the very end, and from the way I use my crochet, and for a majority of the patterns that I work with, they count this turning chain as a stitch. Not all patterns will, and if they don't, you need to remember to account for that and make an additional stitch in your work to account for the turning chain not being counted as a stitch. Most of the patterns, like I said, will count the turning chain as a stitch. So I would count that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Once I'm done with the stitch that I have here on the hook. So for the 10th stitch, I'm going in right where that slip knot is, pulling through the 3 loops that I had. Whoops, I dropped that, so I've got to pull there for the 10th stitch, and don't drop that again. Try not to keep this out of the screen. So I have all 10 of my first row. Sorry. In order to continue going up the row, I will go 1, 2 for this half double crochet, and then again I will yarn over, go through the loop, yarn over all 3. So 1, 2, through the loop, 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 3 so you have just the 1. And this yarn is a little bit on the splitty side, so I'm just going to quickly try to get through to the end of this row, and then we can move on to the next part. And there we go. Again, before I make that very last stitch right there, in order to make sure I've got my sizing correct and that I'm not missing a stitch. This is important as you're practicing and getting better, so that way your edges end up completely straight and you don't have them doing this thing where they are slanting inward or starting to grow outward where they slant that way. So on this second row, I'm going to count that first turning chain as a stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, in according with that, I have 10 stitches on here. So what I do not want to do is I do not want to try to go into the top of this chain here. Now, the reason I have 10 this way, and this is going to start to taper in on this side and taper out on this side. This is a very, very common mistake, and I made this so I could show this to you. When I'm starting on my row to turn it, I went into that same stitch that the turning chain came out of. That will cause this to angle out this way and this side. If I'm either going to be making this one stitch larger each time while I'm angling it out, or I'm gonna be angling it in this way at the same time. So the way we correct this is we're just gonna frog this back to where I've got my turning chain here. And it's easier to catch these at the start and end of each row rather than 5 or 6 rows later. But I've yarned over, and you see, instead of going back into that same spot, I'm going to go 1 stitch over and pull up through. So now if I quickly cut back across here, so I've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 here where I left off on my 10th stitch last time. You'll see that on this side, it's going more straight up and down. It's less angled. And when I go ahead and put my 10th stitch in, pull up on that, you can see that both these sides are a little bit more in line here rather than angling out and angling in. And I have 10 stitches in each row. As you're beginning, if you're starting projects to learn how to crochet, I recommend starting in multiples of like 5, so 10, 15, 20 stitches, so that way you can count easily enough. I wouldn't recommend starting with something like 100 stitches or whatever. You do want to make it easier on you to make sure that as you're doing each row, you're counting to make sure you're getting the same number of stitches. If you find yourself starting to pull in at an angle or grow outward at an angle, you want to make sure that if you are working with the turning chain as a stitch, that you skip that first little spot that it goes into. If the turning chain is not counted as a stitch, you'll go into that spot, but when you get to the end where the turning chain is at, you're not going to make that chain into a stitch. You're always going to want to have 10 stitches starting and ending the same way. If you've used the turning chain, make sure that you go into the top of it. If you're not counting it, then you don't want to go into that same spot. I hope that makes sense. Those are the easiest ways to correct those. Now we're going to go ahead and move on from here into the double crochet. The double crochet in American terminology, in UK terminology, is going to be the treble crochet. In American terms, it's going to be written as DC for double crochet versus the UK's TR for treble crochet. And the symbols are going to be identical as this in writing. Now I am not going to start a new chain. I'm just going to continue up from this. And the way that I would do that is I'll slip back into my working loop and pull this tight again so that way I can be back to where I'm working. And I'm going to chain the 2 stitches that I would normally chain for my half double, but then I'm going to chain a 3rd stitch because I'm going to be completing the full double crochet. I will turn my hook and project around, and I'm going to loop over it, similar to how I did with the half double. I'm going to go into the correct spot, pull through as though, again, similar to that half double where I've still got 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over to where I now have 4, but instead of pulling through all 3 like I did with the half double, I'm going to only pull through 2 of them, leaving 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through. Then I'm going to yarn over once, go into that next stitch, pull up to have 3 loops, yarn over for the 4th loop, and pull through those first 2, leaving 2 loops. Yarn over again, and pull through. The way you can think of each of these stitches growing in height is if I was doing a single crochet, or rather, let's start with the slip stitch. If I was doing a slip stitch, I would pull through, and then I'd pull that singular stitch through so I only had 1 loop. If I was doing a single crochet, I would yarn over for 3 loops and pull through 2 so I again have 1. 3, 2, 1. If I was doing a half double, I start with the yarn over, go through 3, 2, 2, 1. And then you'll just continue pulling through and causing the stitch to go higher each time and creating your double crochet. 2 stitches around through the lower previous row stitch, 3 loops, 4 loops, 2 loops, 1 loop. So yarn over, through, yarn over, through, pull through, yarn over, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm now going to go into the top of the turning chain from the row below, loop through, chain 1, 2, and 3. So you can see that even though I've increased the height, this side is straight, and while this one has a little bit of curve to it, it is still mostly straight. This is going to happen when you end opposite of your working yarn. This is the turning chain to get up. So when I come back around and go to create the turning chain again in a moment, it'll look like this side has straightened up while this side starts to curve in a little. So if we'll go quickly across. Okay, so here I have yet again made it all the way back around. I have my 2 rows of half double crochet, and then I have my 2 rows of double crochet. You can see that the edges here are pretty well straight. Now again, both corners here where I have my turning chains are going to be slightly more rounded than the section with the ending point or the chain section coming off. This can be corrected by simply blocking when you're done with the project. Most of the time, this will be so minimal and unnoticeable. It's extremely noticeable here because I'm using a much larger hook than is recommended for this yarn, as I wanted it to be able to be seen on the camera. Now, I'm going to continue this next row, but in treble crochet now. The American treble crochet, which is our 3rd stitch of height, is going to be written as TR in English, or if you are in the UK, DTR, or double treble crochet. Symbology is like this in your written patterns. So I've chained up my 3 stitches in order to do the double crochet, and I'm going to go ahead and add a 4th stitch because we're going yet another stitch higher. Now, unlike the double and half double where I start with 2, I'm going to start with 3. Good way to think about this is the single crochet, you start with 1. Anything with the word double, you start with 2. And because I'm doing a treble, I'm going to start with 3 wraps across the hook. I'm going to go in let's see if I can't get some lighting better here. So when I hold this here, I'm not going to go right here into this first spot at the very base of my turning chain, but instead I'm going to go 1 spot over, yarn over, and pull through to where now I have 4 loops on my hook. I will yarn over for the 5th loop, pull that 5th loop through 2 loops, yarn over. I've now got 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull that 4th one through those 2, leaving just the 2, yarn over, and pull through. So again, wrap once, wrap twice for 3 loops on my hook, go through, pull a 4th loop onto the hook, wrap for the 5th, pull it through 2. I've now got 3 loops, putting a 4th one back on, pulling it through. I've got 2 loops now, wrap the 3rd and pull it through. There are my treble crochet. So 1, 2, and wrapping and pulling up and pulling through 2 loops at a time. And we'll go ahead and get here to the end for our 10th stitch. 2, and boop. And then we'll chain up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn. And we just continue repeating that the same way around, where we put our 3 loops, go through our stitch, 4 loops, pulling through 2 loops at a time until we get all 3 stitches. And we just continue that across this way. Okay. So we're here, and we have done 2 rows of half double, 2 rows of double, and 2 rows of the triple. Again, you can see the turning chain, and with blocking, that would straighten up like that. Each of these rows are very straight for the most part. A little bit of blocking would, again, make those line up perfectly. There's no angling sharply one way or the other or wiggling through there because we are skipping this spot here where we pulled the chain up through and working in the 10 stitches, including the top of the turning chain from the row below. And we are very consistent in that. You can continue this, and depending on how many stitches you want to create, so say I chain up 5 stitches, so I want to add 1 more than the treble. Again, I would start 1, 2, 3 wraps, so I have 4 on there. I would stick it through, pull up, go through 2 of them, yarn over, through 2 of them, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and that would be 4 stitches tall. And Most of our patterns that we are going to find are going to be using a variation of the single crochet, the half double crochet, the double crochet, the treble crochet, and slip stitch used within those for various parts. So I want to thank you guys for joining me this week. I hope you guys learned something with the half double, the double, or the treble crochet. I highly recommend practicing those. Next week, we are going to get into a little bit more into the reading of patterns. I've got a couple swatches here to show you the same stitches done with a different hook size, and a recap of some of what we've learned on the look of the stitches, along with those terminology bits that we've learned, putting those all together. And we are going to start working on combining those into the start of learning how to start a simple project pattern of the basic granny square. We're not going to do any of the fancy like heart-shaped ones or any of that. We are just going to start with the basics. So I highly recommend practicing all of what we've learned in the videos up till now. If you haven't watched any of them, please feel free to go back and watch any that you may have been missing. Get really good at practicing your stitches, the single crochet, the half double, the treble, all your various different slip stitches. I will go over the difference in the magic ring and the single crochet, so if you are struggling with one of those, we can work around that. Anyway, please go ahead and join me next week on that, and until then, please like, subscribe, comment, share,